In this great African forest that stretches out on either side of the equator, you can sometimes hear the song of the little people. These voices, which harmonize with the many songs of the forest, are those of the hunter-gatherers, the Baka, the Aka, the Bagyéli, the Bakola, the Babinga, and the Bambuti. Although they are mobile, hunter-gatherers are not nomads. They move within a well-defined area of forest where they find their food resources. For the Aka and Baka, each stop along the way is an opportunity to quench their thirst, eat, rest, or teach the children some of the secrets of the forest. October marks the start of the long hunting season and the harvesting of forest products. Till December, any crops are abandoned, and the whole clan is in the forest for several months to make the most of what it offers in abundance at this time of year. According to legend, the little peoples were created by Mother Nature in the forest where they have always lived. The forest, protective and nourishing mother, source of life, has a sacred dimension for them because it is the refuge of both Jengui, the spirit of the forest, and Komba, the starting point of all creation. Every day, Esuma and his family walk through this dense forest just as they have done since very young. They are at one with the forest. They know every trick to feed or quench their thirst along the way, every path, every relief, every stream, every inhabitant, whether plant or animal. We've all heard of them, and some have turned them into living myths as pygmies, but nobody really knows these little people. Their Bantu neighbors consider them to be the little genies of the forest. As discreet as the breeze beneath the foliage, they know how to speak to the spirits, plants, and animals. Esuma knows how to reproduce the sounds made by other forest inhabitants. He imitates to perfection the call of an antelope or the sound of its hooves on the ground. Esuma is a skilled hunter. He often comes back here with Pongo to check the traps they have set in strategic places. Their small Baka community contributes to the balance of the forest environment. It's their world, both nurturing and protective.
Quand tu te blesses en forêt, là qu'ils utilisent, ils prennent la poudre et la sève de ça, ils mélangent, ils posent sur la blessure. Mon père, l'épée. C'est un Viagra, vraiment pour les hommes. Quand ils crèvent comme ça, ils prennent la racine de ça, ils mâchent, ils avalent la salive, ils rejettent les déchets. Donc pour que l'homme doit être dur envers sa femme.
The little people live in small egalitarian social groups. Their lifestyle as itinerant hunter-gatherers is dominated by constant mobility over a vast territory. The group is both dependent upon and indebted to the great forest, from which they derive most of their pharmacopoeia and food resources. These days, Esuma and Pongo can no longer hunt big game. Local rangers often exert brutal pressure on small forest communities who are restricted from accessing their most essential resources. An axe made locally by his friend Pongo, a vine wrapped around his waist. That's all Asuma needs to climb to the top of the tallest trees to harvest wild honey or scan the distant horizons. From up there, Asuma can see the vast territory of the little people as far as the eye can see. He doesn't care about the borders that divide the great forest. Here we are still in the forests of Cameroon, but to the south we can already make out the equatorial forests of Congo-Brazzaville, Gabon, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and to the east those of the Central African Republic. Here in Congo-Brazzaville, the forest is better preserved than in neighboring countries and is inhabited by the Aka people. They both feed on it and protect it. A small itinerant group has set up camp here by the river. The Aka are at home in every clearing, at the foot of every tall tree, on the banks of every stream. By following in the footsteps of their elders, their children will find plenty of places to play and learn about life in the forest. The forest shapes the identity of young Aka. They create secret places where they like to meet. In this open school, everyone learns about life through observation and imitation, by slipping into its twists and turns to tame its secrets and dangers. Aka society is based on egalitarian organization. The clan is advised by personalities who assume different statuses. These include the Kobo, the elder considered to be the wise man, and the Bagyéli, who heads the women's society, or the Nganga, the healer, and the Mogba, who is in charge of the camp. From this ephemeral camp, which can be wiped out in a gust of wind, the few families in the small community of Kambole can go out and gather wild fruit, collect edible roots and tubers, hunt and fish. The last hunter-gatherer societies are considered to be leisure societies. Only 2 or 3 hours a day are needed to gather sufficient food. The rest of the day is devoted to social interaction, relationships with nature, and spiritual reflection. All you have to do for tonight's meal at the camp is collect a few delicious protein-rich caterpillars. Once settled, the small group sets about preparing and cooking the food collected that day. The location is favorable, with few mosquitoes and everything you need to erect protective shelters for the night. In a few days' time, when the leaves covering the shelter begin to yellow, the little clan will break camp and head off a little further afield, under a different canopy, on a new itinerary. They will just be covering the distance needed to find new game and wild berries. By nightfall, the men and women are back in camp. This is the best time to share a good meal. Wives, young girls, and children eat first. Then, a little later, when it's dark and the children have gone to sleep, it's the men's turn. Within the couple, the mother and father share the task of gathering and preparing food, bringing up the children, and the social activities of the group. The Aka are among the best dads in the world. They spend a lot of time in close contact with their children. They sometimes go so far as to put babies to their breast to calm them in their mother's absence. The start of the rainy season is the best time to give birth, as nature is even more generous than at other times of the year. Until December, the whole camp will move into the forest for several months to make the most of Mother Nature's bounty at this time of year, which is ideal for major hunting and gathering expeditions. This morning, a child woke up with a fever. The wet leaves placed on the fire generate a thick smoke that the sick child has to inhale. He doesn't appreciate it, but the remedy soon proves effective. Angèle has given birth to a beautiful pink baby. The whole clan is getting ready to celebrate the new arrival. The children take an active part in preparing the ceremony. At dawn, some young boys learn how to make a pestle from the trunk of a freshly felled tree under the guidance of an attentive adult. Paul prepares the oil palm nuts and cassava leaves for today's meal. Under the watchful eye of her mother, Natasha, the older sister is also busy preparing the meal. Observing and imitating older children when preparing food or learning how to make a grater, for example, will quickly overcome the hesitations of the youngest child. Everyone, children and adults alike, put their heart and soul into preparing the meal that the little clan will be able to share as soon as night falls. The ceremony to welcome the new baby is approaching. These leaves are used to make the skirts worn by married women during ritual dances. A people of oral tradition, the Aka have handed down their knowledge from generation to generation, involving children in all the rituals and activity of life from an early age. The first dancer enters the dance circle. By giving rhythm and movement to her skirt of foliage, she intends to ward off evil spirits and thank benevolent spirits for their protection. The newborn is presented to the clan. Singers and dancers ask the Jengui spirit to protect the child from illness caused by malevolent spirits. Their vocal polyphonies use the yodeling technique. They express the culture, the founding myths, and the cohesion of the small community. Each participant modulates his or her voice as they see fit, so the music is constantly evolving. This morning is honey day. A few of us head off into the forest in search of bees' nests. This will also be an opportunity to introduce a few young people to the collection of wild honey, which can be dangerous if you are not sufficiently prepared. The vast majority of the inhabitants of the African forest live off an economy based on hunting, gathering, and sharing. They have managed to ensure the group's subsistence from natural resources without transforming their environment through agriculture or animal husbandry, and without having to domesticate animals apart from the few dogs that accompany their hunting expeditions. They obtain cooking utensils, knives, axes, or spearheads by trading with Bantu farmers, their neighbors. The raison d'être of the little people is the jungle, with its sounds, its mysteries, and its silences. They are happy to roam it, as they do today, on dry land or soaring through the canopy in search of wild honey. Now it's the basket's turn to be hoisted up to the top of the forest giant, before coming back down loaded with these slabs of wax gorged with this good honey. Often preceded by collective rituals, the harvesting of the precious nectar has a high symbolic value. It is considered to be the liquor of life. Some of these delicious slabs of wax never make it back to the camp. They are eaten on the spot by the small group of honey hunters who have earned them. A real treat for the children, who can't wait to dig in. This is how children learn about life in the forest, by following in the footsteps of adults. From an early age, they learn to seek the consent of the spirits of the animals, plants, and elements before going out to hunt, gather honey, and all the fruits of their nourishing forest. From an early age, they learn to climb majestic trees, set snares and traps, and recognize healing herbs and plants. This evening, food is plentiful, and it's time for the honey hunters to share the day's anecdotes with their tribe. Michel is a skilled hunter. He takes advantage of the early hours of dawn to offer the children of the camp a short session on observing and learning the language of the animals of the forest. Here, man belongs to nature, and children learn at every stage of their young lives to listen to it, to hear its sounds, to identify each of its animal or plant inhabitants, but above all, to respect Jengui, the spirit of the forest. Komba, the Great Spirit, created the visible and invisible universes, and then left Jengui, the forest spirit, to govern the human world. Sometimes Jengui appears furtively to the little people through a sign, a shiver that runs through them, a vision. But was she really real? The spirit of the forest is everywhere, in the river, in the foliage of the trees, under the canopy. These places are inviolable sanctuaries, surrounded by prohibitions and taboos, which the little people respect to the utmost. Anytime they are going to gather food, hunt or fish before one of the great ceremonies, the Kambole people first ask for permission from the spirit of the forest and the spirits of its inhabitants, animals and plants. The small group spotted a few rat burrows in the forest. The rat gallery is a complex habitat with an entrance and an exit, as well as a living space, a food reserve, and a place for droppings. A net is placed at the exit, and the entrance is smoked to draw the animal out. Jengui is always called upon by the little people for the most important ceremonies, such as the initiation of the young. Some of the clan's children are ready to undergo the initiation ritual, the traditional ceremony of passage from one age group to the next. It's an opportunity to transmit teachings to the youngsters, to reveal some of the secrets of the forest, hunting techniques, prohibitions, what not to do, what not to say. The young initiates undergo bullying, trials of deprivation and endurance, and are then cloistered until the Jengui spirit comes. This initiation is led by the Kobo, the patriarch. He holds the traditional powers and controls the relationship between each totem and its family. Each of the 32 clans that make up the Aka population is represented by a totem: the elephant, the gorilla, the Mwabi tree, or any other great animal or plant ancestor. The children are excited, waiting for Jengui. The protective spirit emerges from the forest, spinning around. He has taken on the form of a plant being. By covering him in his raffia robe, Jengui honors the new initiates and places them under his protection. The Jengui rite, also found among the Baka of Cameroon and the Bakawa of the Central African Republic, is an ancient initiation ritual for boys. It symbolizes the rebirth of the child as a new adult in Aka society. Jengui is the subject of rites reserved for the initiated, and most of these rites must remain secret from the uninitiated and people from the outside world. Announcing major events, the rite is the link between the visible and the invisible. It enables the Aka to reinvigorate and receive spiritual blessings. Not so long ago, you didn't really become a man until you'd killed an elephant. Today, the Aka and Baka have replaced the elephant with the antelope. In doing so, they have adapted their rites of passage to the constraints of new forestry legislation designed to protect certain animals now threatened with extinction. The little clan of Kambole sing and dance their joy at seeing the young initiates consecrated by Jengui, a spontaneous, natural moment of festivity, as is always the case when the little people are happy. The initiates are taken to the river to be purified once again.
C'est l'esprit de la forêt qui commande ici. Quand tu n'es pas initié avec l'esprit de la forêt, ne viens pas ici seul. Autrement, tu vas embrasser les malchances.
Jengui remains omnipresent in the spirituality of the little people, but damage to the forest environment, pressure from the outside world, the proselytizing of dominant religions, and the forced or voluntary displacement and settlement of forest communities are irreparably distancing new generations from the original spirituality and teachings of the elders. Never far from this itinerant zone, there is often a village of sedentary Bantu farmers with whom the little people barter, with more or less dependence. Today, with the lessening of the forest and the penetration of more and more roads, this traditional way of life is tending to disappear, even if the relationship with the forest remains strong. By the side of the track, a temporary camp of mungulus, or grass huts, gives shelter to a small Baka community that has just emerged from the forest. The local authorities want to relocate them here. The forced settlement of all the forest peoples, decreed in 1955 by the state of Cameroon, began the decline of Baka culture. This movement has led to the natives settling along the roadside, in constant contact with the majority population, their Bantu neighbors. Sedentary Bantu farmers who still too often consider that the Pygmies and their destiny belong to them. This was the beginning of a process of dependency that plunged the indigenous communities into the abyss of difficult survival on the fringes of their protective forest. All these changes have a direct impact on the practical and oral transmission of knowledge. The Baka have become sedentary, reduced to begging by the roadside, and no longer have access to the forest that nourishes them. It is now managed by the state or allocated as private concessions to agroforestry companies or multinational agribusinesses. In this region of Mintom, on the borders of Cameroon and Congo, the incessant procession of log lorries is indicative of the intensity of the relentless clear-cutting that is destroying whole swaths of the great tropical forest forever. In just a few decades, these great forests have been exploited, transformed into World Wildlife Fund parks and reserves, concessions, agroforestry and mining operations to the detriment of their oldest inhabitants. The most coveted species, such as the precious muabi, are cut and sawn on site by mobile sawmills in the middle of the jungle.
Les arbres qu'on coupe là, ce sont nos remèdes. Nos remèdes. Bon, si ces arbres, on finit de les couper, nous allons nous soigner avec quoi? On n'a pas d'argent pour aller au dispensaire, mais on court directement dans la forêt. C'est notre boîte, notre ressource. Le Baka ne détruit pas la forêt. Si on m'a dit maintenant que le Baka détruit la forêt, je vais dire non. Pourquoi nos aïeux n'ont pas détruit la forêt? Et nous, actuellement, on va les détruire. Et on sait que toutes nos choses se trouvent dans la forêt.
The Baka, who have settled on the farmland of their Bantu neighbors, are employed to work in the fields, clearing land and maintaining various wooden structures. From a society of leisure typical of itinerant hunter-gatherers, they have moved seamlessly into a society of work and exploitation for the benefit of a dominant population. Little by little, small permanent houses have been built by the authorities without the community having any rights whatsoever to the land. This policy, known as taming the Pygmies, has focused on education and conversion to Christianity. It was introduced in the 1930s by the colonial powers. Everywhere, new tracks are being built to facilitate the penetration and exploitation of the forest as part of major cooperation programs with countries such as China or multinationals that covet Africa and its riches. The forests of the interior are now linked to the political capital Yaoundé, to the economic capital Douala, and to the ports and major industrial zones of western Cameroon. In these western lands around Lolodorf and Bipindi, the Bakola and Bagyéli peoples are experiencing the full impact of the clash between the modern world and the world of the forest. Founded by nuns in the 1960s in Bipindi, the Foyer Notre-Dame de la Forêt takes in around 100 Bagyéli primary school children.
Les Pygmées étaient toujours dupés dans les échanges. Ils étaient traités comme des moins que rien. Et les sœurs ont fait ce travail de fond pour essayer de faire comprendre aux Bagyéli qu'ils étaient des êtres humains comme tous les autres et faire comprendre en même temps aux Bantous, c'est-à-dire les voisins, que de considérer aussi les Pygmées comme eux-mêmes. Et à côté de ça, on leur apprenait à lire, à écrire, à calculer. Réduire la marginalisation, c'est notre objectif à travers la scolarisation de tous les enfants Bagyéli qui peuvent être capables de se faire scolariser, mais dans le strict respect de leur identité culturelle, parce que nous faisons la promotion de leur culture.
Lui, il voit le ballon. Qui autre voit quelque chose encore?
Nous commençons par la langue maternelle et on complète avec la langue nationale pour la compréhension.
In Cameroon, only 5 to 10% of forest children attend school. This is mainly due to the mobility of communities, who often return to the forest with their children for long months on end.
Ils étaient frustrés. On les insultait aux Pygmées, parce que c'est péjoratif, Pygmée. On les insultait, Pygmées, vous êtes des animaux, regardez, il ne peut même pas comprendre, il ne peut pas parler. Et cet enfant qui se sentait frustré retournait au village.
Here the children maintain an organic link with their world, while at the same time opening up to modern Cameroonian society. Their language is recognized and valued, as is their culture. In this way, the shame of being Pygmy is gradually erased. But the forest remains the ultimate refuge. The Bagyéli are always ready at any moment to sink into it for a while. or forever. Near Lolodorf, a Bakola community has chosen to isolate itself in the middle of the jungle, a few hours' walk from the sealed track. Nabonzwendi is home to several families grouped together in a number of camps in the middle of a hilly area. Unlike other areas more affected by deforestation, game is still abundant here. Hunting and gathering are still the main activities of the Nabonzwendi families. Not far from their camps, these families maintain several patches, small clearings where they can engage in a little shifting cultivation. There are no hemispherical huts or mungulus here. The Bakola live in solid poto-poto daub huts, or in rectangular huts built from branches, leaves, and bamboo bindings. Music and song punctuate the daily activities, from making a basket to a fishing net. Festive meals usually consist of a starchy food cooked in water, such as manioc, plantain, or rice, accompanied by game or poultry raised around the camp. These meals are eaten within the family unit or together on special occasions during visits or when the hunt has been successful. In the tropics, night falls quickly. In the twilight of Nabonzwendi, the clamor of the Bagyéli becomes more solemn. Bisamba songs are mostly performed at weddings and funerals. This nocturnal dance, the Bapea, calls upon the spirit of the forest. Bapea is performed to celebrate births, rites of passage, to welcome visitors, or to celebrate successful hunting or fishing. Through their facial expressions and dancing, the dancers summon the goodwill of the forest spirits. Guardians of a world on the brink of collapse, the Bakola of Nabonzwendi have chosen to escape for a while from the difficult changes that lie ahead. Even further west, the coastal region of Kribi is the country's most important tourist center. Residents of Douala and Yaoundé, plus a few international tourists, gather here at weekends to enjoy the benefits of the ocean or take excursions along the rivers that run inland. Their banks are inhabited by a few Bagyéli communities whose main activity is to wait for tourists in a hurry looking for a furtive encounter with the good savage. The daily presence of these unprepared tourists is not without consequences. Whether there for an hour or two, alone or in a pack, the tourist never comes empty-handed. The track leading to the camp is littered with the empty pouches of third-rate liquors that guides and visitors hand out to the Bagyéli.
Ces sachets d'alcool arrivent ici par des gens, des visiteurs. Parce que d'autres visiteurs ont toujours l'expression que le Pygmée, c'est quelqu'un boire, manger, dormir. Alors, pour qu'il soit content, qu'est-ce qu'il faut? Il faut l'alcool. Le Pygmée, quand il a bu, il est un peu d'un genre. Il dort.
The guides always say the same thing. taking advantage of the naive tourist, pushing the Bagyéli who doesn't really know why he stays on this bank with no future, pushing him into addiction. The cause of this became evident and readily apparent from a higher perspective using a drone. It was then that we realized all that remained of the great forest that fed the Bagyéli was a narrow strip along the banks of the river, far too narrow for the Bagyéli to be able to continue their hunting and gathering activities. Beyond that, as far as the eye can see, are the palm oil plantations of Soca palm, towards the legitimate inhabitants of these lands, which are now being exploited to the hilt. Here, whole swaths of forest have been razed to the ground to make way for the highly profitable oil palm crops.
C'est le problème d'abord prioritaire dans notre communauté, c'est le foncier. On n'a plus de terre. Ou même vous constatez que dans notre communauté, nous sommes face à une grande pépinière qui a déjà pris peut-être 7 hectares de terrain. Ça a pris sans demander même l'avis de communauté. On était subitement, ces plants, ils mettent les produits chimiques. Et ces produits chimiques se jettent dans notre cours d'eau que nous vivons. Ça se jette dans le cours d'eau que nous se lavons.
Those Bagyéli who chose not to work for the multinational were ruthlessly expropriated. The others have remained inside the plantations. Without a birth certificate, most Bagyéli cannot become Cameroonian citizens. With no papers, no jobs, no education, their horizons are limited to the vast fields of palm oil. A little further along, the coastal strip is occupied by the deep-water port of Pygmy. Fondaf has set up this small school here in Lola Bay. This is a difficult area where the Bagyéli people are caught between the construction of the port and the expansion of oil palm plantations.
Quand le projet des ports en eau profonde a commencé, alors le gouvernement a délogé et Bambuti et Bagyéli. Toutes les populations qui sont dans la zone ont été délogées. Alors on leur dit, allez, on va vous faire des relocalisations. Alors le gouvernement a construit des petites cases que vous allez voir. Vraiment, ça fait 4 ans que ces cases ont été construites, mais ils ne sont pas habités parce qu'ils n'ont pas donné les clés encore aux Bagyéli de ces maisons. Alors, et le Bagyéli s'est dit, bon, on va aller intégrer ces maisons, mais on va faire quoi? Ils n'ont pas de chasse, ils n'ont pas où aller pêcher parce que beaucoup de rivières aussi ont été contaminées à cause des pesticides, des grandes plantations. Alors, ils sont là et ils se disent, on va aller où?
Driven out of their deep forest, pushed to narrow bands of trees lining the roads and tracks, condemned to wander these stripes of wounded forest on the fringes of a world that is no longer theirs, the people of the forest have seen their landmarks and their way of life profoundly disrupted. Mukutha's family has had its ancestral land expropriated to make way for a new rubber plantation. With deforestation, hunting and gathering are no longer possible. Agriculture therefore takes precedence over other subsistence activities and becomes the main source of food. But where is the land for them to cultivate?
Historiquement parlant, ils sont des peuples de forêt qui vivaient de chasse et de la cueillette. Mais aujourd'hui, ils sont sortis des forêts. Ils sont dans des espaces qui leur ont été attribués généralement par leurs voisins bantous. Et cette attribution n'est pas toujours définitive. Parce que là où le problème de foncier commence à se poser, les bantous leur montrent qu'ils n'ont pas de place.
Today, some communities are organizing themselves to implement projects that they have designed and developed. thus seeking to ensure that their future is not left in the hands of outsiders.
La forêt est très très importante. La forêt pour nous les Baka. Si la forêt finit, les Baka vont mourir. Parce qu'il y a tout pour nous dans la forêt. Il y a la nourriture, il y a l'eau, il y a nos remèdes. Le doyen il s'appelle Boko Daniel, le chef spirituel, il faut dire. Il est guérisseur, il connaît les plantes. Il a même les enfants qui connaissent les plantes, les écorces. Ce sont ces jeunes-là qui vont le remplacer. Nos enfants d'aujourd'hui ont déjà oublié ce que faisaient nos parents, nos grands-parents. Construire la hutte, soigner les gens, danser. Cet endroit, c'est pour la formation, leur montrer ce qu'il faut faire. Papa faisait cela, grand-père faisait cela. Comment on construit une hutte. On les amène, ceux qui sont là à l'école, ils viennent ici le soir. L'école de la forêt.
The Asuma camp is located on the edge of the Ja Reserve, a vast area managed by the World Wildlife Fund, where logging and hunting are in principle prohibited. Wombo, the Matterson Kobo, explains that the Baka want to stay close to their ancestors who are buried here in the jar, even if the forest rangers do everything to dissuade them. These restrictions on their subsistence activities, combined with the need to send their children to school, are forcing many Baka to leave the forest and move closer to the tracks and villages. Here in Matterson, the Baka habitat is still essentially made up of traditional huts known as mungulus. There are 3 types of mungulus: the bala for the couple and their young children, the lobembe to provide temporary shelter for hunters, bugula for young single boys. Together they form a camp, the botoka. It is the women who build the mungulus. No important decision can be taken by the community without their approval. As they settle near Bantu villages, the Baka have gradually abandoned the traditional mungulus, replacing them with the rectangular Bantu house. By losing their monopoly on building huts, women have gradually seen their place in Baka society deteriorate as they come into contact with Bantu societies, which confer on women a role inferior to that of men. The construction of a mungulu is always accompanied by yeli songs using the yodeling technique. Yeli is a polyphony of sounds and words charged with a strong spiritual power essential to the survival of the group. The yeli is sung by the oldest women under the direction of the Mo Yeli, the matriarch of the women's society and guardian of harmony. Bay ceremonies are linked to important events in the life of the group. They are necessary for successful hunts, expeditions to gather food or harvest wild honey, conflict resolution, and healing. Despite its apparent fragility, the culture of the little people of the Great Forest remains surprisingly powerful. Whether they are Baka, Aka, Bagyéli, or Bakola, they survive as best they can in a wounded environment, thanks to their constant adaptation to the pressures of the outside world. The ultimate connoisseurs of their environment, The last itinerant hunter-gatherers have lived since time immemorial in areas that they have managed to preserve. Today, they have an essential role to play in the survival of the great primary forests and in the survival of humanity as a whole. As Kono from the Asok camp told us, the forest and we are one. If the forest dies, we disappear. If we disappear, the forest loses its only ally. Fortunately, Kuma, Jengui, and the spirits of the universe are always there to give us strength and hope.